Complete History of X-Men, Earth 616, Part 1. The X-Men are a privately owned security force created to harbor peace between the emerging Homo superior, nicknamed mutants, and baseline humans. The roster is made up of mutants who have been trained and educated in the use of their powers at the Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Their operations are funded by Professor Charles Xavier's family fortune and from the patents he created. Due to assaultation, mutants, or Homo superior, are born with superhuman abilities which generally manifest themselves at puberty. Mutants are often hated and feared by other humans because they are different from themselves. Spending most of his adult years studying mutation at Oxford University, Professor Charles Xavier, who himself was a secret mutant telepath, formed the legendary X-Men to protect a world that hates and fears them. Following an encounter with the Shadow King, Xavier vowed to protect the world from the threat of evil mutants and endeavored to foster peaceful coexistence between humans and mutants. Working with Moira MacTaggert, he eventually decided to start a school for mutants, training them to be what would eventually become his first X-Men. Turning his father's estate into Professor Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, Charles's earliest student was young Jean Grey, only 12 years old when her mental powers manifested. He constructed the Danger Room to test mutants, and developed Cyberno, a prototype mutant detector that was later replaced by a more powerful machine, Cerebro. After years of preparation, Charles decided that it was time to recruit the young mutants whom he had been keeping track of as anti-mutant hysteria hit its peak. With reports about a young mutant accidentally endangering and then saving a crowd of people with an optic blast, Charles traveled to Washington, D.C., seeking out FBI agent Fred Duncan, assigned to investigate reports of mutants. Xavier convinced Duncan to allow him to enroll young mutants in his private school and train them to battle evil mutants. In the following days, Charles recruited Scott Summers, the young mutant in the news story. Rescuing the boy from the clutches of evil mutant Jack Winters, Scott became the first of the X-Men, as Cyclops. Next, Cyclops and the Professor rescued young Bobby Drake, a mutant commanding extreme cold and moisture, from an angry lynch mob. He joined the group as Iceman. Xavier's next recruit was the winged Warren Worthington III, who was already embarking on a solo career as the high-flying Angel. After a brief battle, Angel agreed to join the group. Their next recruit was the dexterous and intelligent Henry McCoy, whom the X-Men rescued from the would-be conqueror, the Conquistador. Rounding out the group, Charles had Jean Grey join them as Marvel Girl. After training extensively in the school's Danger Room, the students were sent on field missions to protect the world from dangerous mutants who used their powers against humanity. The first mission brought them to Cape Citadel, Florida, and in direct confrontation with the self-styled Master of Magnetism, Magneto, who became their most frequent enemy. Although this adventure hailed the X-Men as heroes, growing anti-mutant hysteria eventually marred their next adventure found them defending Washington, D.C. from thief and mutant teleporter, the Vanisher. They had their first interaction with the superhero community, clashing with Iron Man. They also found that not all mutants were interested in joining when the immovable Blob rejected an invitation into their ranks. Magneto returned to plague the X-Men, this time with his own group, the so-called Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. They first clashed with the X-Men when the Brotherhood took over the nation of Santo Marco and later attempted a full-on capture of the X-Men. Next, the X-Men aided the Sentry against his foe, the General, and clashed with the Fantastic Four when the Professor became entrapped by the FF's foe, the Puppet Master. The X-Men had 3 subsequent clashes with the Brotherhood, The first, a failed attempt by the Brotherhood to recruit the Submariner; the second, a similar scenario involving the Blob; and a third failed recruitment, absurdly prospecting the Thunder God, Thor, into the Brotherhood's ranks. Following the X-Men's graduation, they faced Eunice the Untouchable, and aided Spider-Man against Menace and Sundown. During this period, the professor briefly left Cyclops in charge of the school while attempting to stop the alien Lucifer from conquering the world. This attempt was foiled thanks to the assistance of the X-Men and the Avengers. Beginning the two groups' long-standing association, the X-Men gained another ally in Quasar when an investigation of his existence at the South Pole led to the discovery of the Savage Land. The X-Men aided Quasar and his saber-toothed cat, Zabu, in defeating the Swamp Men. The X-Men finally witnessed the apparent end of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants following an encounter with the alien Stranger, ending with the Stranger taking Magneto and the Toad to his planet for study, and transforming Mastermind into dense matter. New threats arose, such as the Professor's step-brother Cain Marko, who terrorized the X-Men as the mystically empowered Juggernaut. The X-Men defeated Marko with the aid of the Human Torch. With anti-mutant hysteria again on the rise, scientist Bolivar Trask invented the Sentinels, giant mutant hunting robots. However, the robots revolted against their master, capturing Trask and the Professor and taking them to their new robotic leader, Master Mold. Master Mold planned to enslave the human race, but the X-Men saved the Professor and found a way to destroy them. The encounter ended with Trask's death. Still recovering from their battle against the Sentinels, the X-Men were once more targeted by a returning Magneto, who was defeated and recaptured by the Stranger. They attended the wedding of Reed Richards and Susan Storm, aiding in its defense from a legion of party-crashing villains gathered by Doctor Doom. The X-Men battled Mimic, a bitter young man who had gained the ability to mimic other people's superpowers and learned the X-Men's secret identities. The battle ended with Mimic stripped of his powers and with no memory of the X-Men's civilian identities. Lucifer resurfaced to finalize his master's alien invasion, using the Blob and Eunice to pose as X-Men to besmirch the team's standing with the public and otherwise occupy them. Although the Blob and Eunice escaped, the X-Men succeeded in foiling Lucifer's plot. The X-Men faced two non-mutant threats in foiling Count Nefaria's attempt to ransom Washington D.C. and battling the Locust. Jean was forced by her parents to leave Xavier's for Metro College. Despite the fact that Jean was no longer attending their school, she remained part of the group, although with less regularity. The rest of the team battled El Tigre, preventing him from taking over the world with the power of the Mayan god, Kukulkan. Fearing an imminent threat, the professor pressed the group to find new recruits. They unsuccessfully pursued Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch and Spider-Man. They recruited Mimic, though, who had regained his memories and powers following a lab explosion at Metro College. He joined the group despite the Puppet Master using him as his pawn to destroy the X-Men. The X-Men soon learned of Factor 3, the organization that sent agents Ogre and the enslaved Banshee after them in an attempt to kidnap the Professor. Freeing Banshee from Factor 3's control, the X-Men easily defeated Ogre and foiled the plot. Mimic left the team after he lost his powers, stopping the Super Adaptoid. The X-Men stopped the Warlock's world domination plot and halted Ralph Roberts' armored Cobalt Man rampage at Stark Industries. Factor 3 struck again when the Professor attempted to cure his step-brother of being the Juggernaut. The resulting experiment of both science and sorcery ended with the Juggernaut's revival and the Professor on the brink of death. Factor 3 mentally contacted the Juggernaut and tried to get him to join their group. The X-Men ultimately stopped the Juggernaut with the aid of Doctor Strange, helping force Marco into the Crimson Cosmos. However, during the process, Factor 3 kidnapped the Professor. The X-Men came to the rescue of Ralph Roberts again, landing them in a conflict between the Mole Man and Tyrannus. When Banshee attempted to contact the X-Men after learning of Factor 3's European headquarters, his message was interrupted, leading to the X-Men briefly battling Spider-Man, mistakenly believing the wall crawler was a member of Factor 3. Without the money to pay for airfare to Europe, the X-Men attempted to raise it but ended up taking a loan from the wealthy philanthropist father of Tom Riegel after the X-Men aided in stopping Tom's rampage as the Armored Meccano. Arriving in Europe, they were captured by Factor 3, whose membership included the Vanisher, Blob, Eunice, Mastermind as well as two new villains, the Changeling and Mutant Master. The group found the X-Men guilty of betraying mankind and sentenced them to death. Before executing the X-Men, Factor 3 revealed that they intended to initiate World War III by attacking both the United States and Russia, sparking a nuclear exchange between the two. The X-Men split into two, foiling both plots and confronted Mutant Master at his headquarters in the United States. There, with the aid of the Changeling, they freed the Professor. Mutant Master was revealed as a member of the alien race, Cirrus. The X-Men and Factor 3 worked together to stop Mutant Master and parted peacefully but vowed to meet again as enemies. Upon returning to the mansion, the X-Men were rewarded with new costumes designed by Jean. The X-Men investigated the discovery of Frankenstein's monster, which turned out to be a malfunctioning robotic scout for an alien race. The X-Men were forced to destroy it. Professor Xavier learned of an impending invasion from the alien Xenox race. Needing time to prepare, the Professor made plans to place himself in seclusion. Approached by the terminally ill Changeling, the Professor imparted some of his mental powers to the dying mutant to aid him in his role of posing as the Professor while Charles prepared for the invasion. The only other member of the X-Men who was made aware of this plan was Jean, who had her mental powers unlocked by the Professor. Xavier went into seclusion while Changeling took his place. The subterranean grotesque, mutated by the underground nuclear testing that destroyed his people, threatened the Earth. During the ensuing battle, the Changeling, posing as the Professor, sacrificed his life to stop Grotesque and saved the Earth. After the Professor's funeral, the X-Men were captured and imprisoned by Magneto, who had just reformed the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Also wishing to get revenge against the Avengers, Magneto allowed Angel to escape to lure the other team to Magneto's hideout. Although Magneto pitted the X-Men and the Avengers against each other, the two groups succeeded in defeating him. Magneto seemingly perished in an explosion. Returning to the mansion and still mourning the loss of their mentor, the X-Men were visited by FBI agent Duncan. After the X-Men were read Xavier's final will, bequeathing everything to them, they were forced to battle the Juggernaut. Juggernaut had been temporarily returned to Earth before being shunted off to the Crimson Cosmos once more. After the battle, Agent Duncan informed the group that by government order the X-Men were to disband for their own safety. This split proved to be short-lived. After Beast and Iceman battled the Warlock, now calling himself the Mahayogi, and Cyclops and Marvel Girl battled Quasimodo, the group was drawn back together when Cerebro detected a large concentration of mutants in the San Francisco area. While investigating, the X-Men met a mutant named Lorna Dane, who had arrived in San Francisco with no recollection how she got there. They learned that Mesmero, a mutant hypnotist, was amassing an army of mutants in the name of Magneto to enslave humanity. Believing Lorna to be the daughter of Magneto, the army captured Lorna and Iceman, and took them to Mesmero's mutant city outside of San Francisco. There they activated Lorna's latent mutant powers. The X-Men came to Bobby's rescue and learned that the group was seemingly led by Magneto, actually a robot, who claimed that Lorna was really his daughter. The X-Men managed to escape, but Lorna stayed behind, deciding to remain loyal to her supposed father. The X-Men returned to destroy the mutant city, having Cyclops pose as an evil mutant named Eric the Red in order to infiltrate the militia. During the ensuing battle, Iceman revealed to Lorna evidence proving that she was not Magneto's daughter, and she helped the X-Men defeat Magneto and Mesmero. This prompted Magneto to flee and detonate Mutant City. Escaping with the X-Men, Lorna returned with them to New York City. The X-Men attended the wedding of Yellow Jacket and the Wasp. Later, an accident during a test of one of the professor's inventions led to the X-Men accidentally teleporting Blastar from the negative zone to Earth. During the ensuing battle, Blastar was seemingly killed when the machine to which he was linked short-circuited. Scott soon re-entered the life of his brother Alex, who had just graduated from university. However, Alex was captured by the Living Pharaoh, a mutant who found that his and Alex's mutant powers were linked. Tracking the Pharaoh to Egypt, the X-Men battled him there and learned that Alex was a mutant who could control plasma energy. In the ensuing battle, Alex was sealed in a special sarcophagus created by the Pharaoh to allow him full access to Alex's powers, transforming Pharaoh into the living monolith. Alex managed to break free once more, cutting off the Pharaoh's powers, but Alex was horrified to find that he didn't have much control over his own powers. Before the X-Men could help Alex, he was captured by Sentinels that had been rebuilt by Larry Trask, who was hunting down mutants with the aid of Judge Robert Chalmers. Trask, the son of Bolivar Trask, revived the Sentinels to get revenge against mutants in general, and the X-Men in particular, for the death of his father. Giving Alex a uniform to regulate his powers and naming him Havoc, Trask had the confused mutant aid him and the Sentinels in capturing all the world's known mutants, including Iceman, Lorna Dane, and various X-Men villains. Alex aided the X-Men in defeating the Sentinels when he learned that Trask, who was actually a mutant himself, didn't intend to keep his word. Cyclops managed to win the day by convincing the Sentinels to destroy the source of mutations, leading the Sentinels to fly into the sun. During the battle, Alex was heavily injured. The X-Men put Havoc into the care of Dr. Karl Lykos, who was secretly required to absorb the energies from other people to survive. However, the life energies of mutants caused Lykos to mutate into the powerful pterodactyl-like humanoid called Sauron. Sauron battled the X-Men, but later fled to Tierra del Fuego and reverted back to Lykos. Tracking Lykos there, the X-Men were unable to stop him from committing suicide to avoid draining the energy of his lover, Tanya. Traveling into the Savage Land, the X-Men searched for Lykos' body, while Cyclops, Marvel Girl, Iceman, and Beast reunited with Khazar and agreed to aid him against the Savage Land mutates. Angel, searching for Lykos on his own and unaware of his comrades' subsequent team-up with Khazar, was duped into joining with the mutates by their leader, the Creator, secretly Magneto. Warren soon learned the truth and assisted the X-Men in defeating Magneto and destroying his citadel. The resulting destruction caused the mutates to revert back into early Savage Land life forms. Returning to the United States, the X-Men went to Washington, D.C. to stop Sunfire, a fire-wielding mutant from Japan who had been manipulated by his imperialist uncle Tomo to despise the United States for their part in the bombing of Hiroshima during World War II, from interrupting an important conference between US and Japanese officials. The X-Men were shocked when Professor X turned up alive and well and explained to them that he had been preparing for the coming Xenox invasion. With the help of Cyclops and Havoc's powers, the Professor linked every mind on Earth in order to drive the Xenox invasion away. The victory left the Professor on the brink of death, requiring the X-Men to seek out the Hulk, whose human persona had the knowledge to cure the Professor. The Hidden Years. After an altercation with Doctor Doom and the Fantastic Four, the X-Men got back into training with Xavier again. Iceman briefly left the team over the romantic turbulence between him, Lorna and Havoc, as well as feeling betrayed over Xavier's secrets. Learning what happened in his absence, the Professor sent the X-Men back to the Savage Land to recover the body of Magneto, where their plane crashed. While most of the team was recovered and nursed by the people of the Savage Land, they were told that Jean had perished in the crash. They soon learned that they had misinterpreted the explanation, as people in this region did not die, but were sent to the land of the dead. The X-Men were soon embroiled in stopping the Nuguri race from enslaving other Savage Land natives, while Jean learned that Magneto was still alive. The X-Men defeated Magneto and his revived mutates, captured him and left the land in a ballooned aircraft. When a storm hit their craft, Magneto escaped while Angel and the Nuguri named Avia were lost at sea. The remaining X-Men were whisked away to Kenya where they met the young Ororo Monroe, a mutant who could control the weather. Cyclops, Beast, and Marvel Girl helped Ororo defeat the weather-controlling deluge. Meanwhile in the States, Iceman, Havoc, and Polaris received a mental call from the Professor to seek out the others who had gone missing. Lorna and Havoc arrived in the region to search for their friends with Quasar's help, while Iceman attempted to get to the Savage Land alone, to no avail. Iceman was found with amnesia by Carl Lycos. Lorna and Havoc picked up Bobby's mutant signature and sought him out. The other X-Men returned home only to be attacked by the Fantastic Four. Explaining to the Fantastic Four that they linked every mind in the world to stop an invasion by the alien Xenox, the X-Men realized that while they saved the Earth, they did not prevent the Xenox from turning their invasion fleet on another world and team up with the Fantastic Four to deal with their menace in space. While in space, Jean's mind was contacted by and her body briefly possessed by the Phoenix Force. However, the contact was erased from everyone's mind. The X-Men and the Fantastic Four then worked together to shunt the Xenox homeworld into the negative zone where it couldn't harm anyone. Returning to Earth, Jean had a secret screening session with the Professor and Beast traveled to Duffy, Illinois, investigating a new mutant detected by Cerebro. They met a little girl named Ashley Martin, who has gained mental control of one of Larry Trask's damaged Sentinels. However, as it regained its original programming and attempted to kill all three mutants, Ashley shut it down. Xavier and Beast battled the young girl, who turned against them. Xavier was forced to use his mental powers to delay Ashley's mutant powers to trigger only once she would mature. The professor sent Beast back to the mansion while he stayed to monitor the girl's recovery. Angel and Avia were rescued from sea by a barge that was happening by and were sold to a man named Kruger. Scott, Jean, and Candy Southern searched for Warren, leading them to a Kruger's boat-run freak show. They were captured and devoured by Kruger, who sold them to the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants along with Angel. They later defeated the Brotherhood. Havoc and Polaris got caught up in a battle between Sauron and Magneto and his mutates. The battle ended with Magneto's defeat and Iceman regaining his memories and being recovered by his teammates. To ensure that he was undisturbed and remained believed to be dead, Lycos used his hypnotic powers to make the three X-Men forget their encounter. Candy warned Angel that his uncle Bert was attempting to marry his mother following his father's death. The X-Men stopped the wedding, foiling Bert's plot, but were too late to prevent her from dying of the poison Bert was administering to her. Havoc, Lorna, and Iceman came home to find the mansion empty and Cerebro detecting a new mutant in the Himalayan mountains. Finding their comrades gone, the X-Men went after them and learned the fate of the First Line, a group of heroes predating the Fantastic Four who perished battling Skrulls. Realizing Cerebro's initial signal picked up the hidden realm of the Inhumans. Returning home, the X-Men found their friend Avia poisoned by Kraven the Hunter, challenging one of the X-Men to beat him in combat for the cure. The Beast accepted, winning the duel. Lorna was compelled to leave when put under the mental control of Tad Carter. Following after Lorna, the X-Men found that Tad was a member of a group called the Promise, mutants who were attempting to shape human and mutant kind and spent 10-year intervals in cryogenic sleep. The group decided to take Havoc, Lorna, and Angel into the fold, and rejected the others, sending them to their doom. The group ended up unconscious in the realm of the Mole Man. As the core X-Men battled off the Mole Man and his monsters, Angel was freed by a member of the Promise and accompanied her to see her family. When the family wanted nothing to do with her, she returned with Angel to free Havoc and Lorna. When Havoc went off to stop Magneto and Submariner's attack on Earth, which was being opposed by the Fantastic Four, Angel refused to go, wanting to search for his friends. He ended up getting turned into stone by Pixie and Macquarie of the Eternals, who did not want to be discovered, but put Angel on the right track to finding his friends. Havoc went to New York to help in the fight against Magneto, but got chased off by an anti-mutant Mob 108. Ultimately, the rest of the X-Men escaped from the Mole Man's clutches and were reunited with Warren, while Havoc managed to free Lorna from the Promise, who parted company when their leader Tobias Messenger was secretly killed by one of their own. Ultimately, while Iceman realized that the Professor meant well in lying to the X-Men to deal with the Xenox invasion, he was not ready to rejoin the team. He was briefly conned into going after Spider-Man by racist politician Sam Bullitt, but rejoined the X-Men shortly after. There he got into a fight with Havoc over Lorna, prompting Alex to leave the group. Lorna went after him, where they got into a battle with the Hulk, who confused Lorna for his lover Jarella. The duo was captured by the Secret Empire before they could return to the X-Men. Hank left the team for a position at the Brand Corporation, where he further mutated while battling the Secret Empire. Ashamed of this transformation and in deep with the crooked Brand security, Beast ignored all calls to action from the X-Men. The remaining X-Men investigated a series of murders perpetuated by Morbius the living vampire that were blamed on Spider-Man. Although the group battled Spider-Man initially, they learned the truth, and helped Spider-Man cure himself of an illness and take Morbius into custody. Beast was captured by the Secret Empire, as were Warren, and later Bobby when the professor sent the remaining X-Men to check on their friends and colleagues. The remaining X-Men helped the Hulk defeat the Juggernaut, before learning that the Secret Empire was responsible for the other mutants disappearing. They eventually teamed up with Captain America and the Falcon to fight their common enemy and free their friends. Iceman aided the Human Torch in catching the elemental villain Equinox before departing on a secret mission with the X-Men. While the X-Men were away, the Professor aided the Defenders in stopping Magneto and his Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. The battle ended with Magneto's creation Alpha the Ultimate Mutant changing Magneto and his Brotherhood members into children.